29F here. Just want to share the weirdest and most messed up family drama that I never thought would get this out of hand. I grew up in a small suburban town, an only child, with two parents who weren't rich but always made sure I felt loved. They were the kind of parents who'd come home from work tired but still managed to make dinner together, or help me with homework. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was good enough for me. Looking back, it's wild how much I missed about what was really going on. I never had to worry about money. My maternal grandparents were wealthy, but they weren't flashy about it. They had this humble charm about them, and treated me like I was the most important person in the world. They weren't just the occasional gift-giving kind of grandparents. They were the kind who paid for my school tuition, signed me up for piano lessons, and made sure I could join every extracurricular activity I wanted to. They made it clear that they just wanted to see me happy. At first, I thought it was just their way of showing love, but there were moments, even when I was a kid, that felt a little off, like how my parents would get this weird energy whenever my grandparents would visit. They'd act so excited, like they were seeing royalty or something. And when my grandparents handed me gifts, whether it was cash for school or just some small trinket, they'd look at me like they expected me to do cartwheels of gratitude, even though I hadn't asked for any of it. I was 10 when my grandparents bought me my first real big gift, a grand piano. The thing was beautiful and I loved it, but there was this strange moment where my parents insisted it be placed in the living room as family decor. I mean, who uses a piano as decor? It was like they didn't want me actually using it. Looking back, it's obvious they wanted to show off that their daughter was getting all this stuff, but there was no intention of me ever really having the chance to enjoy it. By the time I hit 12, things started changing. My parents' attitude toward me was different when my grandparents weren't around. They'd become colder. Not in an outright hostile way, but in these little ways that didn't make sense. No more hugs just because. No more checking in on me in the evenings. They seemed to be distant. When I'd ask them about it, they'd say they were just busy, but I knew it wasn't just that. And then came the teenage years, where things got a lot more complicated. My grandparents started paying for bigger things like private school tuition, summer camps, and eventually a car. My parents never seemed happy about it. I remember overhearing one of their arguments. My dad was saying, we shouldn't have to rely on them. They're buying her love. And my mom was saying something like she doesn't even appreciate what they're doing for her. I just stayed quiet. I was a teenager and I didn't want to get involved, but I could feel this weird resentment building between them and me. The worst moment came when I turned 16. My grandparents offered to fund my college education. I remember the way my parents reacted. They immediately shut it down, claiming they could handle it, that they didn't want anyone else's money involved in my future. My grandparents agreed to compromise by putting the money in a trust for me, so I wouldn't have to feel guilty about it. But from that point forward, things between my parents and me went from bad to worse. They started making me feel like I owed them for basic things, like the roof over my head, the food on the table, even the electricity in my room. Everything was a transaction now, and I could sense the bitterness growing. It was around this time that my parents started bad-mouthing me to their friends, telling everyone how expensive I was, as if it was somehow my fault that I wasn't able to pay for my own college tuition or car insurance at 16. Their words cut deep, even though I was still young enough to not fully understand what they were doing. I remember, on my graduation day, my grandparents were there, so proud of me. They wanted to take photos, and they did. But my parents barely stayed for the ceremony. They left early, barely acknowledging it, and refused to take photos with me. I was hurt but didn't let it show too much. Right after graduation, my grandparents decided to take the whole family on a luxury vacation. My parents acted like they couldn't care less.